Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of CEO and Market Expert Interviews. I'm your host, Lucian. Some of you know me as Triangle Investor from X. Today, I have Colin Healey as my guest. Colin is the CEO of Premier American Uranium, a company focused on the exploration and development of uranium projects in the United States. Colin, welcome back to my show. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to see you too.
Thank you. You were a guest in my show a few days after you took a role as the CEO of the company. I believe that was somewhere mid-March. A lot of things happened on the market and with the company since then. So before we start with the questions and the company developments, tell me, how is your experience with Premier American Uranium so far?
Well, it's been a whirlwind for sure. A whole bunch of things have happened since I joined, and it's been an incredible experience so far. A lot of the things that I thought about when I joined, the things that made me want to be with this company and this team, really came to fruition. It was really reassuring to have that team around me delivering what I thought they could deliver. You know, we had great support from our existing shareholders in the financing. We completed the acquisition, so it's been a really strong start, and I'm really enjoying it.
Excellent. Colin, what's your view on the current uranium market and uranium equities performance recently?
Well, as far as uranium equities have gone, since the Russian ban, or since the U.S. implemented a ban on Russian low-enriched uranium, uranium price has kind of trickled off a bit, nothing too extreme, but uranium equities followed the price downward a little bit, and I think we're starting to find our base here, and uranium price is starting to creep back up this week. And I think uranium stocks, once investors are comfortable with the uranium price putting in a base, I think we're going to start to see the real participation in uranium stocks, the reason that we all buy them, for the leverage to uranium price. I think that we're just in a bit of a period of flux with excuse me, with uranium price, and as soon as we get through that, I think you're going to see some great responses in uranium stocks. As far as the
sector.
As far as the sector goes, I mean, we continue to be dramatically undersupplied, and with no great visibility on how that supply deficit is going to be rectified. This is the reason that I'm in this space, sitting in the chair that I'm sitting in. I want to be a participant in what I see as these extremely compelling fundamentals. You know, we've got a supply deficit of 40 million pounds with no great visibility on how that's going to be rectified, and that even now the existing cost curve that's producing that 140 million pounds, the higher end of that cost curve is well in the $70 to $80 range for those highest marginal cost additional production. And for me, that means the uranium price has got to go higher. We need to make up a big supply deficit, and to do that, we're going to need higher uranium prices. And end of story. So I'm still extremely bullish on uranium price. There's a whole bunch of other things happening globally that are risks to supply, and domestically in the U.S. that are very positive for the uranium sector in general. But before you consider all of those things, you still have this big supply deficit, and it's very simple to understand the impact that should have on uranium prices. And I think that probably by this fall, we're gonna start to be seeing a real response in uranium price, and the uranium stocks will follow.
I tend to agree with you with that. Your company had a lot of news lately. The recent one is from yesterday, completion of the American Future Fuel acquisition. Tell me more about this transaction, and how did the current shareholders welcome this news?
I think it was an extremely positive experience and accomplishment to bring in American Future Fuel. Probably the most important thing that's happened since we announced acquisition is the new resource that was able to be published on the project. When we first started looking at American Future Fuel, there was confirmation drilling that it reconciled extremely well with the historic database. That was phase one. There's a plan to do phase 2 confirmation drilling. Those are the permits that they had applied for and are in the process of getting. But this requirement of an updated technical report by way of the acquisition revealed that the authors of the independent technical report were willing to accept the extremely strong reconciliation in the phase 1 drilling and apply that across the historic database, allowing us to deliver a current resource much sooner than we had originally expected. We had expected to go out there post-acquisition, drill a complete phase 2 program as previously described, and use that information compiled into a technical report and get a current resource probably earlier in the first half of 2025. So we've just leaped forward by 8-9 months at least, and this has been the most rewarding thing so far about the acquisition is to pull that in there and have a current resource and be in a position to now go and look at what I consider to be strategies for much more impactful exploration, resource expansion, and extension of existing resources, rather than spending so much money on confirmation drilling. So it's been a great experience. It's definitely exceeded expectations in terms of time frame, and the resource was, our current resource of 23.5 million pounds is substantially larger than the 18.9 million pound historic resource. Now, there's reasons for that. We were able to bring in some open pit attributable resources in the St. Anthony deposits on the southern portion of the property. But overall, an extremely strong outcome for us.
Yeah. Out of this 23 million, I believe 18.5 or 18.6 million pounds are in indicated category, and inferred category is around 5 million, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, those are very solid numbers, just like you said. And you said that you still need the exploration work to be done. But can you provide me some specific timelines and specific works? The next steps for the project.
Yeah, sure. For Cebolleta specifically, and we can circle back to the near-term drilling that we have planned in Wyoming. But for Cebolleta specifically, this technical report really changed the exploration and strategy for the project. So the next steps for us, we had applied, or American Future Fuel had applied for a minimal disturbance permit to go and carry out the confirmation drill work that was recommended in the prior tech report. So the permit that we applied for in March is progressing and would allow us to go and do a certain amount of drilling. I expect that permit to be fully approved somewhere in the fall.
Okay.
Which means that, if you look at the new tech report, it recommended some confirmation drilling, about $500,000 worth in the phase 1, and $2 million worth of exploration drilling. So it's a very good position for us to be in. The fact that we have a whole bunch of flexibility now to manage how much we spend on confirmation drilling, because confirmation of a historic resource is not as high impact as exploration and extension drilling, but we have the permits we're processing a permit that's going to allow us to do, the tech report recommended 14 holes of further confirmation drilling. It's much fewer than the 25 that we had originally tried to progress with the permit. The idea is going to be probably carry out some in the fall, some additional confirmation drilling, get some geophysics, downhole geophysics, recover some core to do some metallurgy on, but really focus on a development of an exploration strategy to do expansion and extension drilling, which I think is going to be more high impact for the stock, better use of money overall. And to do that, we were going to require a Type 4 permit, which allows a larger disturbance, but is more complicated to get. So in parallel, we're going to advance this Type 3 permit that we've already applied for, likely do some confirmation drilling in the fall, and at the same time begin the process of permitting for the exploration work that this new tech report has opened the door to do. So it's a bit of a alignment of the strategy, but all for positive reasons, because we got this historic resource converted to current much sooner than we thought. So on one side, we require a different type of permit to go and carry out that $2 million recommended program, which is 65 holes. But at the same time, it leaps us forward. You know, we weren't planning to start that until probably 2025. We'll start the permitting process now. I expect that larger permit to be somewhere in the order of 10 to 12 months to get, depending. So in parallel, we'll be working on that permit while likely conducting some confirmation drilling later this year at Cebolleta.
Yeah, one of the goals is update the mineral resource estimate with additional drill hole and completing the PEA, right?
Right. So again, that's within the second phase of the recommended exploration work of the technical report, and that's something that we'll be considering right from the beginning. So all of our efforts on the exploration side are going to be adding resource, getting to a resource update once we have enough data in the database, and then looking at the economics. And I think that that's the biggest re-rating potential for the valuation of that project, to show the economics in this uranium price environment, and demonstrate the process and how we can physically carry out that the mining of those deposits. And I think that you know, that's an 18 to 24-month process, 2 exploration programs leading up to a PEA and an updated mineral resource, but still way ahead of the schedule that we were on prior to this tech report and resource update. So it's pretty exciting, and I'm really looking forward to beginning that process.
Yeah. One question that every shareholder of development company wants to hear: when, in a perfect world, when do you expect these assets to produce for first pound of uranium? I know it's early, but you have probably some early projections about that.
It's extremely difficult to project something like that. I mean, when you make a statement like that, you're talking about making assumptions about many different levels of permitting.
Agreed.
You know, we have to prove that a heap leach process is going to be economically viable. I think that it can be. I don't think that there's anything about the ore or the metallurgy that's going to make that not a viable option, but it has to be introduced and advanced and permitted and tested. So, I mean, there's 2 years of exploration to get and technical work to get to a PEA. And then we have to work through the engineering and advance that PEA to feasibility study. That generally would take another year. So, I mean, when you're talking about production at Cebolleta, it's 4 to 5 years at the earliest, and probably the long side of that. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of permitting. So for now, we're going to focus on where we can add value, which is advancing it, beginning the initial stages of permitting, and that dialogue with the regulators is a top priority, so that we can do everything in parallel, so we have as much done as we can to tighten that time frame if possible.
Yeah, got it. The Cebolleta asset lies on the private land in New Mexico. Can you explain why is that a good thing compared to having a project on a state land?
Outside of the private lands, you've got potential Navajo lands surrounding, and it can be much more difficult to
apply,
permit, and advance assets on those lands where there's resistance to uranium exploration, production, exploitation. So the being on the private lands is a big advantage, and it's one of the reasons that we prioritize this asset over other assets in New Mexico. This was the one that our technical team thought had the best prospects, and they were very validated in terms of bringing that resource current, but also in terms of the least resistance or friction to through the permitting process. So it's a significant advantage.
Yeah. Colin, let's cover your other projects, and we will do that by starting with Wyoming Cyclone project. What are you currently doing over there, and what are the next steps for that project?
So we're very close on to actually starting our work program in Wyoming at Cyclone. That will be in early July. Somewhere in the next week or so, we should have final authorization of our permits, so we can start accessing the laydown area and the staging area for a drill program. And our plan there is to put out a press release defining exactly what we're going to do in Wyoming in the next week, as soon as we have the final authorization of the permit. And the thinking there is to not make statements ahead of that. But I can notionally, we're looking at drilling 2 targets in Wyoming on the Cyclone project: the North Rim target and the Osborne Draw target to the southeast. And we have a 2023 technical report on that project that outlined an exploration target of 8 to 12.5 million pounds approximately at grade of 0.06%. The first part of the drill program, all the holes are flagged and staked. We just had a site visit out at site with the regulators this week. So we think we're going to be active there in the kind of first week and a half of July. And the program involves about 35 holes at the rim target. The mineralization at rim is about 400 feet deep. And so those will be 500-foot holes. So 35 holes, around 17,500 feet of drilling, give or take. And then at the Osborne Draw target, the mineralization is a bit deeper, around 800 feet. So we'd be another 37 holes there, terminating at about 1,000 feet on average. So another 37,000 feet of drilling over there. The constraint in Wyoming is weather. So yeah, I'm hoping that we can get through all the drilling at Cyclone Rim target this summer. So we should, sometime in late July, we should start to have probe data coming from drill holes. But if we get through the drilling, the 35 holes at Rim, we'll move over to Osborne Draw and start to drill there this summer. If depending on how far we get, that the rest of the drilling at Osborne Draw will be a 2025 campaign. But we're going to be very active there, and it's one of our really exciting exploration prospects. That exploration target of 8 to 12.5 million pounds at 0.06%. Just to remind viewers, Lost Creek is about 10 miles to the east of us, producing 3 million pounds to the end of last year at about 0.049%. So U3O8. So if we're successful in proving up a resource there, it really looks like a viable satellite to nearby existing plants. If we can get larger, if we're at the high side, or if we can expand beyond the high side of that resource target, it could be a viable standalone project potentially. So the goal there is to delineate resource through exploration, and depending on the size, we'll work on the strategy. And the overriding goal of Premier American Uranium is primarily acquisition. So we'll be looking to acquire land, leveraging our strengths, our technical team, to acquire land to complement all these projects and really establish our own critical mass in the areas where we operate.
Yeah, you mentioned UR Energy and their projects, and this is a really good project for UR Energy. Cyclone has also in situ ISR potential. What do you have to do to prove that potential, so to say, on Cyclone?
So step one is defining the resource. Confinement is key to ISR mining, so you have to be below the water table, which we are, and then you have to investigate several types of hydrology issues, the permeability of the rocks and so on and so forth. And, the ability to move fluids through rocks and pump rates and so on, a bunch of technical work that you would do generally after you kind of define a resource. So, down the road, following kind of a resource delineation, we'll be doing the technical work to prove the viability of ISR mining there. But being below the water table is key. The confinement, I don't expect to be a challenge, and we've got the analog of Lost Creek nearby operating in the same basin, in the same formation types, proving that this is viable at these grades. So that's probably the most exciting thing about Cyclone, is that if we have the resource, if we're able to delineate the resource, I think that it's going to be a good win.
Agreed. Same question for your Colorado assets, starting with Monogram Mesa. You have exploration drilling program planned to delineate mineralization. Tell me more.
So Atkinson Mesa and Monogram Mesa are kind of the two lead projects in the Urban Mineral Belt, our Colorado assets, which there are 4 in total. But we don't have an exploration program planned yet for those 2 assets. We're running the New Mexico exploration program and the Wyoming exploration program. The plan for the Colorado assets is to acquire additional data if we can. There's data out there. Both Atkinson Mesa and Monogram Mesa both have about 5 million pounds of historic uranium production and over 20 million pounds of historic vanadium production. And our best, most efficient way to attack those is to acquire that data first and historic production data, and see what we can use to define our exploration and development programs there. So that's probably a 2025 campaign. You won't see us drilling in Colorado this year, but those are projects that have great potential to define resources and become a return to mining at some point in the future. But we're really focused on Wyoming and New Mexico this year. So yeah. Stay tuned on those ones. We'll definitely be coming up with more definitive plans for Colorado in 2025. There's several potential complementary projects in those regions that we'll be looking at. So if you see anything from us, it may be on the acquisition front to bolster the portfolio for the Colorado assets.
Okay. What about Outlaw Mesa and Slick Rock?
So yeah, the Outlaw is to the north end, and then Slick Rock's at the south end. They're 2 separate projects. They both have historical production of both uranium and vanadium, and they are kind of on the back burner until we really attack Colorado. The priority is going to be, my thinking right now, the priority in Colorado is going to be Atkinson, followed by Monogram, and then we'll develop. As we start to ramp up activity on the Colorado assets, we'll create a plan around Outlaw and Slick Rock.
Yeah, you mentioned M&A a few times, and that is in the DNA of your company, the M&A the M&A part. I know that the ink is still fresh on the deal with American Future Fuel acquisition, but can you expand a little bit? What kind of project or what kind of land, size, stage, or jurisdiction would be ideal for you as a next M&A for the company?
So for jurisdiction, I mean, clearly we have a U.S. focus, and I've always said that we don't want to do any M&A that doesn't complement our existing portfolio. My thinking is that in an environment where uranium prices are strong, that assets are going to be competitive to get and potentially expensive, and the way to offset that is to find some synergy, do things that complement your existing asset base. So our focus, unless we uncover an opportunity in an area where we're not currently in, the best use of our M&A resources and the best outcome for shareholders is adding projects that complement our existing portfolio. So in Wyoming, in the Great Divide Basin, or proximal, adding another project in that region with resource potential to start to develop our own hub and spoke strategy potentially, that could be really compelling. In New Mexico, there's certainly other assets in New Mexico that I think would be complementary. It's difficult to say too much more than that without kind of giving up too much. But I
Sure.
think that the main message that I want investors to hear is that we're going to work to make sure that the acquisitions that we do complement the existing portfolio, so that what we pay um, won't be as expensive
Y-
because of the complement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, some sort of co-development uh, capability or some other kind of proximity advantage will be the kind of one of the main criteria as we go forward with M&A.
So you wouldn't exclude Utah, for example.
I wouldn't exclude it, but for sure the focus, certainly potentially great assets in Utah and a great jurisdiction to operate in. So I wouldn't exclude it. But the initial focus, if you see us move into a new region or area, then that means that we have a bigger plan, like we do with our existing assets. We have a bigger plan for that area. So
Mhm.
if we were to go into Utah and pick something up, we would have a plan for additional pieces to that puzzle, unless the initial piece was so big and compelling that it didn't really require. But that's generally not where the opportunities are. The opportunities are in finding things that we can acquire with our technical expertise less expensively, and then use our ability to raise capital to explore and develop them and extract that value.
Got it. You mentioned capital. How is your current cash position, and are you covered for 2024?
Oh, we're covered for 2024. Our exploration programs in that I described in Wyoming are about 2 million US, plus or 2 to 2.5 million US, and that could carry into 2025, depending on how far we get on the Osborne draw target. The work program in Cebolleta, as I said, it's kind of in flux. We're reorganizing that around the fact that we now have a current resource, but the confirmation drilling, the lighter confirmation drilling recommended in the tech report was only 500,000 US. The balance sheet on close of the transaction, prior to some of the remaining outstanding closing costs, we were at 12.5 million. We just received the proceeds of the sub-receipt financing that we did mid transaction, so we're more than covered through 2024, and for look well into 2025, if not fully.
Of course.
It really depends on the signals that we're getting for the market about how aggressive we want to be, and also depends on what kind of M&A activity we can do. That takes resources as well. So it's going to be very, very dynamic, but I think investors in Premier understand that, and we're going to be extremely responsible with the capital and use it for for the best outcomes and the most impactful results.
Understood. As we know, your company has pretty impressive shareholder registry with some known names such as Cyclone, ISO Energy, Mega Uranium, Anchor Energy. Do you see them all supporting the goals of the company and the heading of the company?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw great support from Sachem, ISO, and Mega in the sub-receipt financing, and Encore is expressed great support. We're very aligned in terms of the direction of the company and the strategy, and we're in constant dialogue with them. So I think that it's really, really important that we keep it that way. They're having those strong shareholders, and that support is very, very important. And these are sophisticated investors. Sachem owning 31% of the stock. When investors look at Premier American Uranium as an investment, you're investing alongside some of the smartest,
Agreed.
most educated guys in the uranium space, and they do an unbelievable amount of due diligence on the sector and the investments that they become involved in, and I think that is quite a comforting factor in when you're looking at Premier American Uranium. I know for us, it's allowed us to be more aggressive in being able to set our price and reduce dilution in financings, for example. It offers some difficult difficult to quantify advantages that I think that investors are already seeing. So the relationship is strong, the support is great, and we continue to enjoy a great relationship with them.
Okay, you have very experienced team on your management and advisory board. Do you plan to add more people with maybe with new projects coming to the company? What's the plan here?
Well, with the close of the American Future Fuel transaction, we've added Michael Henriksen and John Indahl to the board, and John Indahl was a fantastic addition to the board. How the board grows beyond this point is really going to be a function of if anything's negotiated in future M&A. But I mean, the board that we have, we've got Tim Rotolo, co-founder of Sachem, along with Mike Alkin. But Tim Rotolo is the chairman. Marty Tunney, chief operating officer of ISO Energy, on the board, and a couple of key industry guys. I mean, the board is extremely strong. John Indahl, for people that don't know, extremely experienced lawyer based out of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Works with the Uranium Producers of America as counsel. Just an extremely strong addition to the board there, and looking forward to his input and guidance, especially on the regulatory and operational front in the U.S. where we operate. But yeah, no immediate plans to expand the board beyond the two gentlemen we just added.
Final question, Colin, and that is Paladin and Fission possible transaction, potential transaction. What's your take on that? Do you have any opinion on that?
I think that you're seeing some opportunistic M&A, and I would expect to see I would expect to see more aggressive acquisition in this environment, and potentially at even higher premiums. I mean, it makes some sense to add Paladin, who has a developed mine and great access to capital. I'm not surprised to see them out looking for a tier one asset to diversify and kind of extend their future. I guess I was a little bit surprised to see the transaction, but I mean, I guess that's the way it should be, right? It's hard for me to comment.
Sure.
Not being in the same seat I was last year, but I mean, I used to cover Fission, so I know the asset really, really well. I used to cover Paladin. I'm quite familiar with their operations and their journey, and I think M&A in general is good for the sector, and I think that we're going to be in an environment 6 months from now where uranium price is starting to be in a bit of a tighter squeeze, and we're going to see even stronger premiums in M&A transactions.
That was Colin Healey. Thank you, Colin, for coming to my show. It was a great chat, as I expected, and let's catch up with some new news for the company. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to delivering some updates on the exploration programs in the near future.